ABC News. This is Turning Point with Barbara Walters, Diane Sawyer, and tonight, Forrest Sawyer. They want to go from the basement
They like to be traveling all over the world playing.
to the big time.
And the whole big rock star dream.
First, they need a break,
You're going to faint when you hear what I'm listening to now.
and that's just the beginning.
We're finally getting a shot.
But even if they get a record made, will it?
Sell. 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 Sell.
Tonight, Chief Correspondent Meredith Vieira takes you inside a secretive world.
People won't admit this, but
It's common practice. It is industry standard.
Behind the battle lines of the music business.
They're almost illegal.
What does it take to make it to the top?
Will you play it Tuesday?
Ask it a bit much.
Come on, we're friends here.
Turning Point. Tonight. So you want to be a rock and roll star. Good evening. I'm Forrest Sawyer. Suppose the Beatles were starting out today. Could they still make it to the top in one of the most competitive businesses in the world? The record industry has changed a lot since the early 60s. But even so, teenagers still dream of becoming rock and roll stars, practicing for hours and hours on their drums and electric guitars. Now, after all that work, how do you get someone to listen? Tonight, we're going to show you just how hard that is as we go behind closed doors at a major record company. For the past year, Warner's Reprise Records gave Turning Point and Chief Correspondent Meredith Vieira unprecedented access as decisions were being made about a promising new band. For the band and the record company, it was a gamble, with certainly no guarantee of success.
It's shortly after 10 a.m. in Burbank, California. Howie Klein has just got a new CD, one he's anxious to hear.
It's a CD.
It's by an unknown band called Love in Reverse. For Howie, who's been in the music business for 20 years, it's a moment of decision. As president of Reprise Records, Howie relies on his instincts to sign bands. Howie clearly likes what he hears. But is he willing to commit the money and resources needed to try to transform this obscure band into a household name? He hears hundreds of new bands every year. Most he rejects. The last time Howie got really excited was a few years back, when a young woman walked into his office.
She just came in here and she sat down and she just had a demo tape and we listened to it and I was just blown away.
That woman was Alanis Morissette. Her first album has already sold more than 25 million copies. Now the question was, could Love in Reverse one day make the same leap, from anonymity to superstardom? There are thousands of bands playing in garages and basements across America, dreaming of making music, of making a record, of making it big. It's a dream that rarely comes true.
of 1,000 people making records, maybe 10 people will see the outcome that they have dreamt about. It's almost impossible to imagine the amount of bands that will never be heard.
This is the story of the struggle to make it in rock and roll, to be one of the few bands that is heard. For Love in Reverse, it begins here, in a basement in the isolated Pine Barrens of New Jersey. 29-year-old Mike Ferrantino is the band's lead singer and guitarist.
From the time he was like 2 years old, he played with an old tape recorder, and at 2 years old, of course, he didn't talk very well, but he would hum different songs as he would turn the reel-to-reels on the tape recorder. And to him, he was making music.
I think when I first bought my first Beatles album, and I sat and listened to that, and I was really fascinated by it. And I think that's about when I realized that this is something I want to do. I want to be the Beatles.
Although it was bigger than he was, when he was 5, Mike began practicing on his father's guitar.
As time went on, it got to be where that's all he did. You know, he didn't want to go out and play with the kids.
But there was one kid he wanted to play with, a kid who lived down the street, Andres Carew.
I remember just like setting up a little concert stage in the bedroom and setting up all the instruments and trying to actually play all of them.
By the time he and Mike were teenagers, they would practice for hours in the Ferrantino's basement, often to an audience of 1, Mike's dad Joe, listening upstairs. Joe Ferrantino, who now runs his own marketing company, encouraged his son's dream because he once shared it. It was the early 60s, the era of doo-wop.
In my arms to hold, I only want you. Every waking hour, every minute of the day.
Joe Ferrantino was a kid with a band of his own and a shot at success.
Within 6 months, we were on a major label, Gone Records, and it was, wow, man, I'm gonna be a rock star.
But that single, You've Got a Bomb, turned out to be one. Joe Ferrantino learned that making it in the music business wasn't that easy. For him, the ride seemed over.
It's always a regretful thing because you knew you had the talent, you knew you were good at what you did, and it would have evolved over the years, and it didn't. But again, I have a vehicle other people do not have to achieve that dream, and that is my son.
As Mike's teenage years dissolved into his 20s, he was living at home, supporting himself with odd jobs, but spending most of his time churning out original songs. He and Andres, who was working as a TV repairman, kept sending out demo tapes to record labels and getting back rejection letters.
I was completely at the point where I was like, there's a good chance this might not ever happen, but at the same time, I'm going to act like it will definitely happen and just keep going for it.
20 years later, Mike Ferrantino and Andres Carew weren't worrying about mega hits, at least not yet. They were still in the basement, trying to get signed to a record deal. But they had attracted the attention of a New Jersey disc jockey who was playing their demo tapes on the radio.
So she's still on that, right?
Band managers Johnny and Marcia Zazula just happened to be listening one day.
John actually fell in love with it.
Johnny Zazula is known in the music business as Johnny Z. In the early 80s, he and his wife Marcia helped transform an unknown heavy metal band into superstars. The band, Metallica.
We get 200 tapes a week. We don't really get to listen to them. There's got to be magic to even, get a CD or a tape to our machine. So we listen to 10 maybe a week, maybe 5. It's murder.
The most exciting part was when Johnny wanted to sign us, actually, because I was like, wow, we're finally getting to that next step from being in the basement. And, once that happened, everything started happening little by little after that.
At the time, it was Mike, Andres, a drum machine, and 2 dancers. Johnny Z liked what he heard so much that he got in touch with his old friend Howie Klein, the president of Reprise Records.
When I was finally coming to New York, Johnny said, well, come over to my house, have a barbecue.
He had dinner at our house.
Barbecue. And I called up the guys in the group and said, look, we have the president of Warner Reprise coming over. If you can get a gig about a half hour away and invite some of your friends and do this in about 15 minutes, well, ask
We could get
if-
you an audience.
Yeah, maybe I could convince this guy to go for a ride to Asbury Park.
And we went to this little tiny club that was not much bigger than my office. It was just really, really small. There couldn't have been 25 people in the whole place.
That place was this New Jersey club, The Saint. Joe Ferrantino says his son Mike knew that night could change his life.
He knew they were going to be there, and if he did a great set, they were going to sign him. That's the way he sounded.
We walked out of the club thinking, oh, well, you know, that was a nice wasted time. And Howie turned around and said, well, I like to do something developmentally with those guys. I really think they have a lot of talent.
I was just floored. I was floored. I see bands all the time, and I was just in shock. It had a certain spirit of that early psychedelic stuff that was so good, but it was sort of mixed in with some very contemporary sounds, and that kind of mix got me really excited.
October 31st, 1995. Just 3 months after Howie Klein heard them in Asbury Park, Mike and Andre signed a contract with Reprise Records for over $100,000. Most of that would go to making their first album. But if the album sold, and sold well, they could hit it big. It's estimated a band gets $1.24 for every CD they sell. So if they sold 1 million, they could make $1 million too.
I'd like to see it become huge. I'd like to be traveling all over the world, playing everywhere for everybody. You know, the whole big rock star dream.
Johnny Z knew that to be successful, Andres and Mike would have to make some changes, and they agreed. First, Johnny wanted a real drummer. He called Dave Halpern, another local musician, who had already had one shot at success with another band.
Put out a great record, had a great producer, and nothing happened. Nothing.
But Dave hadn't given up on the dream he too had shared since he was a kid.
The first time I saw Kiss, boy, oh, that did it for me. I'd get tears in my eyes, and I'd be like, man, I'm gonna be there one day. I made a pact with myself that I would never let anything get in the way of me getting to that level.
The new band would take as its name the title of one of Mike Ferrantino's songs, Love in Reverse. Early last year, Mike, Andres, and Dave found themselves collaborating with legendary producer Russ Titleman. His track record in the studio was stellar. Platinum albums by James Taylor, Steve Winwood, Eric Clapton. When Howie Klein listened to the just-completed Love in Reverse CD last April, he immediately swung into action.
Michael, it's Howie.
Hey, Howie.
Michael, you're going to faint when you hear what I'm listening to now. It is so amazing. It's just like completely phenomenal.
Howie was beginning to generate that all-important buzz about a new band that virtually no one had ever heard or heard of. He was now determined to change that.
Jan, I'm sitting here listening to the final mastered version of Love in Reverse. It is so awesome. I can't wait for you to hear it. I mean, Andrew will play you this record, you'll flip. It's so wonderful. But I mean, the first time I heard them, they reminded me of Pink Floyd the first time I ever saw Pink Floyd. So they've got this.
The album was a hit with Howie, but to really be a hit, it would have to
Sell. 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 Sell.
Love in Reverse would now find out just how hard that is.
So you want to be a rock and roll star? Tonight's Turning Point will continue in a moment.
After more than a decade of boom times, growth in the record industry has slowed to a near standstill. The big problem is the record companies have failed to find enough new artists with staying power, bands that can really excite. But Chief Correspondent Meredith Vieira reports record executives are always looking, and the band Love in Reverse is about to find out whether they have what it takes.
Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and welcome to the Viper Room. Would you please put your hands together and welcome Love in Reverse.
May 6, 1996, a trendy rock club in Los Angeles. Love in Reverse is playing to an invitation-only audience, made up mostly of employees and executives from Reprise Records. The band has to make a big impact tonight, because if this audience doesn't love their music, they won't think it's worth pushing. And every new band needs all the help it can get.
The odds of failure are so great.
The Love in Reverse album will have to compete for an audience with the 20,000 other CDs to be released in 1996. They'll even have to vie for attention and money with the 50 or so other acts on their own label. The next morning, band managers Johnny and Marcia Zazula have a full slate of appointments at Reprise's Burbank headquarters.
What'd you point us?
You're gonna go down the hall. You're gonna turn right.
But the first thing Johnny Z hears upsets him, a promotion man's reaction to last night's show.
I think that the show is really good, but it didn't like marshal me over, you know what I mean?
But they don't marshal you over.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a marshal me over kind of group.
Johnny and Marcia are encountering resistance.
That kind of a
It's
sound.
Johnny here. Hey, Johnny. How you doing, guy? They, you know, I mean, I'm so used to being in New Jersey and I make a phone call and everybody hops.
Oh, we can get them out to shows if that's what you're saying.
Well, I was trying to get them actually.
He wants the band, you know, on the radio.
The thing that we're concerned with.
Johnny Z knows that Reprise has 8 other acts releasing albums at about the same time as Love in Reverse.
And because this, you have to preach Love in Reverse. Preach the band that you represent to as many people as you can. There's that whole world.
He tries to preach the band to the publicity department.
This kind of music, you know, really doesn't have a huge young following.
If Johnny keeps getting this kind of reaction, he knows that Love in Reverse will get lost in the shuffle.
We've had our success based on things that were a little ahead of their time, things that needed a little bit of an acquired taste. If you're speaking to someone at a record company, you're speaking to a person who has maybe 200 to 300 projects going through their finger in a year. Sometimes as many as 20 or 30 things going on at one time. Through all the horror that they're going through, you got to get them to think about your band.
While in the basement, they had complete control. Now they're beginning to see that things are different in the corridors of corporations.
There's that fear in the back of your mind that you're going to lose control of what you're trying to do. And they're going to expect you to go in a certain direction because they're afraid you're going to lose an audience, maybe.
One way Reprise hoped to build an audience for Love in Reverse was to release a test record, simply to get them some exposure. But when the band goes to record stores, they can't find their own record. It's unavailable. When Johnny meets with the head of retail, he wants to know why.
So you'll answer my question?
I will try and answer your question. I have not heard
Johnny never does get a good answer.
the singles theory.
We didn't ask anybody to do anything but their job. That's all. We went to everybody and told them, well, we have a group. Will you be so kind as to go to work when the record comes out? Will you put records in the store, Mr. Record Company? Will you maybe get us some radio stations, Mr. Record Company? Oh, press department. Do you think we can maybe get some press? Oh, touring department. When they go on tour, are you going to do anything? Or are we just going to go out there and go, hi, folks? You know what I mean? You know how many bands go out there without their underwear?
These alternative type stores to play.
But despite all the problems, Love in Reverse has at least one thing going for them. One very important thing. Howie Klein, the president of the company. He signed them, he loves them, his lieutenants know they better get in line.
And I've also sent out a handful of advance tapes to some journalists internationally to kind of tip off some.
July 10th, 1996. Reprise's promotion, publicity, marketing, radio, and retail staffs meet in the company's version of a war room to strategize on how they will launch Love in Reverse.
Not all bands can play as well as these guys.
I'd rather see that kind of a build anyway, to be, I mean, for a band like Love in Reverse to be a musician first and spin later.
We also have a website going right now for Love in Reverse.
we're in development doing a full-blown website for
We
the
have
entire
ads in a lot of the fanzines.
So for
They're,
everybody, Musicland, Transworld, The Wiz, The Wall, Blockbuster, Best Buy, they've all been cooperative. They've all seen some response to the EP.
Today is really the first day we start working radio on it.
And they'll work radio hard because it's crucial. Love in Reverse's album won't be released for another 20 days. But a single from that album has already been sent to radio stations. The initial feedback raises concerns.
One of the remarks I've heard about it is the song sounds different from anything else out there. It doesn't have a generic quality to it. A lot of people go, oh, well, this is really unusual, so.
Yeah, I mean, either that's, you know, what breaks the band or it's what makes people not want to play it, one or the other.
Yeah, I was talking with one guy that was saying half the people that'll be the hook and the other half that's what'll make them nervous.
Getting that single an audience on radio and on MTV is the key component for making an album sell.
Hello.
Ron Stryker.
Yes,
Jan Hendry.
It's Jan Hendry's job to get the song on the air. That means calling stations around the country to convince them, to cajole them, just to listen to the Love in Reverse single. And if they like it, to play it on the radio, to see if their audience does.
Did you have a chance to hear the Love in Reverse track Blueprint?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? And? What do you think?
It's all right. No complaints, no remorse, I guess.
Have you had a chance to play it on the air yet?
Nope.
Will you play it Tuesday? Will you add it Tuesday?
Asking a bit much.
Come on, we're friends here.
Sometimes there are inducements,
I'll consider it.
promises of hard-to-get tickets to shows by other Reprise artists, promises of future considerations.
You know, you do everything you possibly can to get your records played. And I always say, short of illegal.
We're really rocking and rolling tonight.
But what is illegal?
If it rocks, if it rolls, you're gonna hear it right here.
Back in the 50s, disc jockey Alan Freed was credited with coining the phrase rock and roll.
Few simple words, rock and roll.
He was also largely responsible for the term payola becoming so closely associated with rock and roll radio. Freed was convicted of taking over $30,000 in exchange for playing certain songs. In 1960, Congress outlawed this practice, but the law it passed is very nebulous. Gifts can be given of virtually any amount, just so long as they're not to get a specific song played.
On the Rock and Roll 94 HJY, it's Charles Laurenti is here. How cool is this? Right.
But there are still questions raised today about the methods used to get songs on the radio. The competition is stiff. Most stations only add 1 or 2 new songs each week to the rotation of singles they play. That's called the playlist.
It isn't the old days of payola, et cetera, but there are relationships that exist between certain people and certain stations.
And you need those people to go in and put their mouth in the ear of those stations and speak your band's name.
Michael Jackson has a
Some of the people who talk to radio stations are called independent promoters, outside contractors hired by the record labels. It's a way the labels distance themselves from a practice many see as unseemly. But when the independent promoters speak, many stations listen and adjust their playlists accordingly.
Unfortunately, either mysteriously your act gets moved up or it gets moved out. You know,
people won't admit this, but
it's common practice. It is industry standard, unfortunately.
And then, of course, the Refreshments are also going to be playing here in Boston. And
The so-called indies often provide the stations T-shirts, CDs, and other items that they can use as contest prizes for their listeners. And according to Johnny Z, sometimes they even make deals with radio station programmers.
Okay, we'll fly you to England to see Bruce Springsteen if you add Joe Blow to your station.
Oh, I see. I wasn't even going to get that.
The hell with that.
And that goes on.
Absolutely, every day.
Now, I'm just using Bruce as an example, way back when, but of course that's what goes on. And anybody would be lying.
If they said it differently.
You know, it has nothing to do with music. Do you think, I mean, somebody at a radio station loving an act is going to get it played?
But record labels are never sure they've done enough to convince a radio station to play their song. So at Reprise, there's another point of attack. Their 20-person regional promotion staff, foot soldiers like Andrew Gavatzos, who every day trek around the country visiting the nation's 350 rock stations.
Breakfast is served. Hey!
Today, July 17th, Andrew will visit 5 New England radio stations, trying to convince them to play the Love and Reverse single.
Somebody should go in the catering business.
He starts in Portland, Maine.
What's the band? Love and Reverse.
Here we go, gentlemen. 102.9 WBLM, where Portland rocks. What a slick tune from Mr. Clapton.
The relationships with the program directors and everybody at these radio stations just are really important.
From Reprise Records, how are you?
How are you? How you doing, guys?
The band is killer. I mean, the band's killer.
The agenda for Andrew Gavatzos is different in a lot of ways than my agenda. His agenda ultimately is to sell records for this band, to make these guys stars, to make his company millions of dollars.
I mean, certainly it rocks.
My agenda is to get as many listeners as I can for my radio station. Luckily, there's an excellent track record there.
That's what they look like.
I remember when Andrew came to me and said, there's this woman named Alanis Morissette, and you have to hear her today. And it's almost the same conversation.
Everything. They're everything to everybody. Let me tell you, this band...
I want 2 cheese, right? 1 pepperoni.
After Portland, he drives hundreds of miles along the New England roads, visiting station after station,
Rock and Roll 100.3.
bringing pizza.
A new record we got out this week is a band called Love and Reverse.
Eddie, I got something a little...
Bringing gifts. All this just so that the station programmer will listen to the song.
These are almost gone in the country.
But that doesn't guarantee that it will ever get on the radio.
This is
a new drug, the drug of the 90s.
None of the stations today makes a commitment to play the record, but at least they've listened to it. That's a start.
You know, I mean, I'm talking about like next year, say, you know.
We get tons of records. Stacked behind me, it's about 3 weeks worth of records, and there's probably about 150 in that pile. A lot of times, bands will really slip through the cracks, and you might have a major record contract, but if there aren't people like Andrew and record companies out there like Reprise out there pushing and constantly and telling radio stations, play this, listen to this, you should like this, see if you like this, please play it, see if you get response from your audience, then if you don't have that from a record company, it's going to end up on a shelf and then sooner or later end up in a dumpster somewhere.
The next day, July 18th, Andrew hears from Herb Ivey, program director of WBLM Radio in Portland, Maine.
Herb!
How are you, Andrew?
How you doing? What's going on? What's happening up at BLM?
I think BLM's going to give it a try.
All right.
Remember me for this.
Great. Oh, I'm not going to forget you.
All right.
Thank you, Herb.
Have a good day,
We
Andrew.
love you.
I'll see you.
Bye-bye. Great. That's a great start.
It is a great start. 3 of the 5 stations Andrew visited called to tell him they will play the Love and Reverse song. But there's a lot more work to do. Love and Reverse's album will be released in only 12 days.
So you want to be a rock and roll star? Tonight's Turning Point will continue in a moment.
In the summer of 1996, the members of Love and Reverse were just beginning their professional careers, awaiting the release of their debut album.
I want to sell records. I want to have a hit record. You know, to go to every record store and see if it's there, just to get that feeling of walking in and actually seeing your record amongst all these people that you grew up loving all your life.
July 30th, 1996.
Wow, I didn't even see it yet. Yeah. That's what it looks like in the plastic.
Love and Reverse's debut CD called I Was Here is released.
It's a dream come true for me. We're finally getting a shot. We're finally getting our up at bat. And I really think we're strong. And we're going to blow it right over the fence.
It is the major label debut for these guys.
That night, the band appears at a hometown New Jersey record store before an audience of loyal friends and family.
So please put your hands together. Please welcome Reprise recording artists, Love in Reverse.
Here, the members of the band are treated like celebrities. Here, they're already rock stars.
I really believe that there were a number of songs that had the potential to be hits on the record. You know, we knew going in there that there's that chance that people wouldn't get it right away, but there was also the chance that it could all of a sudden boom.
But it would take several more months before anyone could judge the album's success. For Love in Reverse, that meant day after day on the road promoting the album, touring the hard way. No limousines, no adoring fans, just another opening act with no track record that no one had come to hear.
Sometimes you feel like a salesman. A lot of times what happens is people don't warm up to you until the middle of the set. By the time they really get into it and realize, wow, this band's actually pretty cool, you're done.
Love in Reverse's summer would end on a sour note.
This is Blueprint for a Possible Song, FM 1063.
Love in Reverse would be played on only 37 stations in America, just 1/10 of the rock outlets. As Reprise executives had worried,
the song sounds different from anything else out there.
The band's new and different sound was the kiss of death on radio, and MTV declined to play the video. So without the needed exposure, the album bombed. So far, it has sold just over 1,000 copies. For a debut album, that's typical. There are few smash successes like Alanis Morissette's. What isn't typical is what's happened to Love in Reverse since.
1, 2. Can I get some music in here, maybe?
They've been given the chance to record a second album, thanks to their biggest fan, Howie Klein, the president of Reprise Records.
This is a process of developing an artist over a long period of time, and we feel that we're gonna keep trying to make progress, not necessarily have a big score.
I hope I keep getting another shot. But I know I'll always be doing music either way. I mean, if I'm not on a label or if I am on a label, I'll be doing it and going, knocking on everybody else's door.
Mike Ferrantino now understands the reality of rock and roll, outside of the basement.
Not everybody gets a chance to have an overnight success. A record doesn't come out and all of a sudden you hear it all over the radio and you got a big hit. I want a chance to be heard. Let people decide whether they like it or not. If they hate it, they hate it. If they love it, then I'll be there to put 150,000% into it.